You're watching NewsWatch on WOAY.
Well, I've got a snowman tie on, so you know I can't wait for winter. What about you, Bree?
I'm very excited. I can't wait to see some snow.
And Braden?
I'm looking forward to it. Winter is definitely my favorite season out there.
Indeed. Let's go into the studio and walk you through our winter outlook.
The main driving mechanism to our winter is El Nino, which is the warming of the water in the equatorial Pacific. However, as Chad will explain, the area along the equator where the warming is occurring is one of the key components to how the weather patterns will evolve this winter.
All right, thanks, Bree. That's exactly right. Typically with an El Nino, you either have the warmth right here off the coast of South America, or the warmth is across the central part of the equatorial Pacific, called an El Nino Modiki, which is some sort of a Japanese term. The warmth is focused right here off the coast of South America. It will stay there through the winter time, and that typically results in a winter with a lot of warm air invading parts of the east. There's another factor that we watch for that is included in our winter outlook called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, and Braden has more.
Thanks, Chad. The next biggest driving factor for the winter is what the waters north of the equator in the Pacific are doing. The Pacific Decadal Oscillation is another key driving factor in how the weather patterns move across the U.S. Notice the cooler than average water temperatures here. This is a definite sign this particular signal is in cool or negative phase. Chad will explain how this signal has been persistent now for the past few winters.
Thanks, Braden. Yes, the PDO has been in a cool phase now for the past 3 winters and has contributed to a lot of the snow that fell across the west and the mild weather that we had across the east. Now, there's one more factor that we looked at called the Indian Dipole, and Bree has more on that.
And now, believe it or not, the third most significant factor in our winter outlook is the water temperature anomalies way out there in the Indian Ocean. Chad will explain that an emerging strong signal in the Indian Ocean will likely help drive weather patterns that move into our region this winter.
Thanks, Bree. As we go way out into the Indian Ocean, the Indian Dipole is in a positive phase. In other words, the water temperatures are very warm and continuing to warm up through the middle part of the autumn. Now, when the IOD gets very strongly positive or very warm, that typically results in an influx of Pacific air across much of the country, and that usually limits the amount of snow that we get here locally when the IOD is in a very positive phase. So those are the 3 important factors that we looked at in the winter outlook. We have El Nino, we have the PDO, and the Indian Dipole.
Thanks, Chad. Now let's check out our checklist. The StormWatch 4 weather team believes these factors in this order will ultimately determine if we have a cold and snowy or mild winter. We put the most emphasis on the El Nino and the Pacific Decadal Oscillation and slightly less input into the Indian Dipole. Now Chad will run through the relationship between our winter snowfall and each of these weighted input signals.
Thank you very much, Braden. And we took a look at those 3 factors: El Nino, the PDO, and of course the IOD. The all-important question, are you going to have to shovel a lot of snow this winter? Well, first of all, as we check out the East Pacific El Nino snowfall patterns for Beckley, the range is from 12.8 to 100 inches. There's a huge range in snowfall. The average snowfall with an east-based El Nino is about 42.4 inches. In Bluefield, it ranges from 7.8 to 62 inches, the average being 38.8. As we take a look a little bit east across the Greenbrier Valley, 7 to 49 inches. The average snow in an east-based El Nino is 26 inches. So there you go, a wide range, of course, in snowfall. As we look at the cool PDO snowfall patterns, this is where we really see a sign developing, folks. In Beckley, the range is 3.9 to 57.5, but the average is 20.3 inches, well below average. In Bluefield, the range is 2 to 62.7. The average is 28.3 inches. And in the Greenbrier Valley, Lewisburg only averages 18 inches with a cool PDO. Now, with the IOD, With a warm IOD in Beckley, we averaged 40 inches of snow. Keep in mind the average is between 50 and 55. In Bluefield, it's 29.4 inches with the warm IOD and 24.8 inches in Lewisburg. But there are some big ranges in there, folks. Look at that. An inch to 43.5 inches with the warm IOD in Lewisburg. 2 inches is the minimum in Bluefield and 19 inches in Beckley. Now this part is probably what you've all been waiting for. How much snow is going to fall? Is it going to be a wet winter? Is it going to be a snowy winter? It's going to be a warm or cold winter? And which part of the winter is going to have the most snow? It's going to fall from December through March, or be focused in the beginning or ending part of the March? All those questions answered right now.
Winter since the early 1970s, in which the Pacific decadal oscillation was in a negative phase and temperatures were quite warm in the east and cooler than average in the west. Along the main storm track through the Mississippi Valley, temperatures are usually near average, so a mix of warm and chilly days.
Thanks, Bree. The main storm track is through the Tennessee Valley with a negative PDO, so above average rain is expected in this region. The Great Lakes also have above average precipitation. Northern California, Texas, and Florida have the driest signal.
Thank you, Braden. When we review our analog or past similar winters to see what is expected this winter, the West is the cold spot. In the East, Midwest, and Great Lakes are the warm spot. The Southeast sees near average temperatures.
Thanks, Bree. The southern tier, Mississippi Valley and East see a strong signal for above average precipitation. Notice the below average precipitation across a sliver of the central Appalachians. The Northwest tends to be the driest spot in the U.S. during the winter. For the analog years, we chose best to represent this upcoming winter.
All right, thank you, Braden and Bree. That's a breakdown of what we expect across the U.S. Now the important question is, what do we expect here in southern West Virginia? Well, for our report card, here's what we think. More snow than last year, which is easy to beat. We had a record low snow year, right? Wet winter ahead, so lots of rain, and warmer than average temperatures, especially our nighttime lows. This is the snowfall we anticipate for the entirety of the winter. 10 to 15 inches along the Route 19 corridor. Higher elevations, so 15 to 20 inches once you get closer to the Virginia border. If you're in the Greenbrier Valley, not much snow, 5 to 10 inches. And Snowshoe, some of the higher elevations, 30 to 40 inches. So yes, more snow than last year, but definitely nowhere near average. We're not there yet, but the growing season will be coming to an end. So when do we expect the first hard freeze? In Beckley, the average first freeze is October 21st, but the latest ever was November 12th. We forecast right in the middle of November before Bridge Day. Snowshoe, West Virginia, we anticipate that will be a couple of days earlier, October 12th. The average, October 7th. As we move a little bit further through our area, in Lewisburg, we expect that to be October 1st. Some of the colder air settles into the valley. That's why temperatures there can cool off more readily than the higher elevations. And in Bluefield, we expect the first hard freeze of the season to be October 6th. So there you have it, our winter outlook. Yes, more snow than last year. Most of the snow will come towards the tail end of the winter and come in 1 or 2 storms in February or March. We will likely start out the winter pretty warm and pretty mild with a lot of rain. That is the StormWatch 4 Winter Outlook. Thank you for joining us.
Now, in terms of the winter outlook that you guys just did a great job with, so we will have, just to put it in more shorter terms, we will have more snow than last year because we obviously didn't have a lot, but it's still not going to be that much.
Yeah, so the average is about 55 inches of snow, which we haven't had around here in a while. We expect below that, 10 to 15 inches. And I really think it's going to come in 1 or 2 storms.
Okay.
And, we get some of those upslope snows where we get a cold front come through, it turns colder, we get some flurries. Yeah, that's going to happen during the winter time. But those don't usually bring us more than like half an inch of snow. It's going to be maybe a blockbuster or 2 with 10 to 15 inches later in the winter.
I like that. That sounds good. Thank you for joining us.